What is going on, everybody? Kevin Calhoun here. Welcome to the Calhoun Show. If you've been here before, welcome back. If you're new, welcome in. I'm Kevin, and we have a really cool show today. My buddy from Point Park University, where we went to school, who is now famous the world over for his work on Chairshot Reality on WrestleZone.com. With his co-host Justin LaBar. It is Josh Isenberg joining me on the podcast in a little bit here, talking wrestling, talking NFL, talking about his love for Brett Favre, I'm sure. And gonna have Josh on. Very excited for that. But first, obviously, before we get into Josh, which will be the main chunk of this episode, we have a Final Four. In the NFL, with the Patriots and the Steelers on one side and the Falcons and the Packers on the other. And Josh and I get into our picks, so I won't do that now. We actually do a little bit of a breakdown on that, along with all of the cool, fun wrestling talk that we had, which was a blast for me because I was a big wrestling fan growing up, and I've kind of fallen out, but Josh was teaching me a bunch of stuff. So, but yeah, no, so I won't pick the game here because you'll hear it again. But this is interesting, and it's exactly what I was talking about last week. It's exactly what I was saying, where the Falcons aren't being talked about, they're not being talked about, and all of a sudden they're hosting the NFC title game with a shot at the Super Bowl. And I like their chances. I do like their chances. So let's get this thing started, as we always do, with Patty's music, and then we'll get to Josh Isenberg of Chairshot Reality. Very exciting, cool episode coming up here. This is the Calhoun Show. All right, as always, you can follow the show on Twitter at Calhoun Show and email the show calhounshow@gmail.com. You can follow today's guest, Josh Isenberg, at Josh Isenberg4. You can follow Chairshot Reality at CS Reality, and Justin LaBar, Josh's co-host, at Justin LaBar, and then WrestleZone.com as well on Twitter. So for us, you can subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud. You can also listen to the show in its entirety on YouTube, on our YouTube channel at Calhoun Show, so you can go subscribe there as well. Facebook is where we get most of our questions and comments from, so like our Facebook page, and if you want to tweet at me personally, it is hilariously titled at Shut Up Calhoun. So I will take my own advice to start this episode of the podcast and send it right into a great talk I just had with Josh Isenberg. We do wrestling, NFL, Brett Favre, all sorts of fun stuff. So thank you to Josh for joining me on the show. You guys enjoy this, and I will talk to you on the other side.
The Calhoun Show.
All right, making his podcast debut, Josh Isenberg. Welcome to the Calhoun Show.
I'm excited to be here, Kevin.
So Josh and I went to college together, it seems like so many years ago.
Yes, many, many years ago. What, 8 years ago? 6 years ago? I'm losing track. I'm almost 30 years old now.
You graduated, what, 2010?
Oh, yeah, man.
Good Lord. Good Lord.
I know, seriously.
So Josh, among many other talents, is co-host of Chairshot Reality on WrestleZone.com with another one of my college buddies, Justin LaBar. And you guys, I am unfamiliar with your new host. Who else is on the show with you guys?
So now we have another gentleman who was an intern at the Pittsburgh Tribune reviewer, Justin Work. His name is Juice Springsteen. That's obviously not his real name, but he's
I love it, though.
He's a wrestling fan. And we also have Ronell Hunt, who works for WPXI, which is NBC affiliate in Pittsburgh. So a cast of characters, but it's always been Justin and I, and then just other pieces kind of circling around for the website.
I once had the privilege, I believe for episode 100 of CSR, of filming Josh getting beaten with a kendo stick.
I was shellacked, Kevin. I was shellacked in the back, and I remember you still own the rights to that picture.
I do.
I mean, my back looked good. I mean, if Brock Lesnar didn't have a tattoo, it'd basically be my back.
Essentially, yeah, for sure. Your back could fit inside the sword tattoo he has on his chest, though.
All right, that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, all right, so we watched wrestling a lot together, actually, back in college. Over the last few years, I was telling you a little bit before we started that I've kind of fallen out of wrestling a little bit, but we're approaching my favorite time in wrestling, which is the Royal Rumble.
Sure.
So going into the Royal Rumble and knowing I was having you on, obviously, I'm looking at this card and I'm seeing a lot of names I recognize.
Yeah,
and
it's one of those things that you are looking at names of Goldberg and The
Yeah.
Undertaker and Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, so what's going on here? Is this has this been going on for a while? Are they leaning on these guys? Is it a lack of talent, or is it just that these guys want to be around?
It's a lack of talent. It's a lack of main event talent. They have a lot of really good guys. You know, guys like Roman Reigns is really good, and Seth Rollins is great, but they're relying on guys like Goldberg and The Undertaker to sell out huge arenas because they know that guys right now like Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns, and even to an extent maybe an AJ Styles, who I think is the best wrestler in the world right now, they're still needing guys like Goldberg and Undertaker to fill seats for these big events. And the main reason why they're loading this up for the Royal Rumble is they're trying to sell out the Alamo Dome in San Antonio of 60,000 seats. You know, the Royal Rumble has always been a 20,000 seat event. It's one of my favorite events, but it's never been at the level of 60,000. Now, WWE wants to do that and wants to break records, and what better way than bringing a couple of Texas boys, you know, like The Undertaker and a potential appearance from Shawn Michaels, not in the Rumble match, but in San Antonio, to put the butts in the seats. So it's definitely a lack of talent, and it's the road to WrestleMania, so they're loading up on as many part-timers as they can.
Now, obviously, this is the time of year now where everybody's going to start speculating about WrestleMania title matches and main events and all of these different things. Going into the Royal Rumble, do you have a guy that you're looking at as the favorite?
There's a handful, and it's for the first time, and I would honestly say since probably 2012, that you have more than one or two options to win the Royal Rumble. Now that SmackDown and Raw are two separate entities and you have two separate world champions, it really opens up a multitude of different options. There's been talk of The Undertaker being a heavy favorite in Vegas booking to win the Royal Rumble and challenge for the World Championship at WrestleMania. And then you have younger guys like Braun Strowman, who's 6'8" and 380 pounds, but wrestles like a 280-pounder, that is getting a monster push and is constantly in the main event of Monday Night Raws and has been a force to be reckoned with. But then you have Goldberg and Lesnar, two guys that you think, well, they don't need the World Championship or the Universal Championship, which is the main title on Raw, to be relevant. They're Goldberg and Lesnar by themselves, so why would they need a title? Out of all of those guys, I think the one guy that I think is actually going to win right now, and it's going to change probably when I wake up tomorrow morning, is Chris Jericho. Because Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens on WWE Raw has carried that program for the past 6 months of just their in-ring abilities, their character development outside and backstage and interviews. They are just the most entertaining and consistent guys on Monday Night Raw, and I think that they deserve to feud for the Universal Championship. But what I think and what the fans think isn't necessarily what Vince McMahon thinks.
Yeah, and Chris Jericho has always had the kind of 6 months in, and then before you know it, it's like, oh, he's gone for now. Is he full time again, or is this another quick run in and out?
So he's been here full time since January of last year.
No kidding.
So he was at the Royal Rumble January of last year and has constantly been in live events. He's worked with a lot of the younger talent in NXT. His WrestleMania match was against AJ Styles, which was his first WrestleMania match, obviously. So that feud really spurred Jericho to become the sidekick of Kevin Owens, which it was a happy accident. Is ridiculous catchphrases that have just caught on. The list of Jericho calling people stupid idiots, and I mean, just so simplistic things. But as you know from the 90s and 2000s, Jericho adapts to the times and makes his character fresh again with a drop of a hat.
Oh, he's one of the best all time at it.
Yeah,
just absolutely one of the best all time. So you mentioned a couple of guys in there that I haven't watched a ton of because I haven't been watching as much at all lately. But I was flipping channels a few weeks ago. And it was a Monday night, and I went by Raw, and I literally stopped and went, who the fuck is that guy? Talking about Braun Strowman. That guy is huge.
A monster, Kev. I'll tell you this much. he does not wrestle, like I said, like a monster. I mean, he's booked to destroy people, obviously. He's enormous. But he is quick on his feet. He is not a big show where he does one or two moves and that's it. This guy has unlimited potential because, like I said, he was a former bodybuilder 5 or 6 years ago before being signed to WWE. I believe in 2014 is when he signed, or 13. So he's still relatively young. And Braun Strowman's a guy that started with the Wyatt family and now transitioned to himself. And he's probably been one of the outstanding stars of Raw ever since the brand split. He's gotten a big opportunity, a big push. Some people think his push is becoming too quick as they're putting his name in the likes of main events of WrestleMania. But nonetheless, he's a guy that's trying to tell everybody, I'm not this normal big guy that does 3 moves and calls it quits. He has more to his arsenal.
There were so many of those guys, too. Just constantly.
Mark Henry, Big Show, Vladimir Kozlov. I mean,
Vladimir
jabronis that were horrible.
Kozlov was I think one of the most disappointing, like one of those guys where it's like 8 weeks of teaser videos leading into his debut, and then the debut was like, oh, that's the guy?
That's exactly what I was like. Oh, really? That's the guy? But yeah, they didn't do that with Braun, thankfully. So, I mean, you look at WrestleMania and you always want to see, even at WrestleMania weekend, I've been there since WrestleMania 27 as a quote, whatever you want to call me, an editorial columnist or whatever the hell I do. But I've been there for 6 straight years of WrestleManias and have talked with fans and everything. It's not like people want to see Goldberg every single week, but it's fun because it's nostalgic.
Sure.
But they don't want to see him being in the main event. They want to see the guys that know how to wrestle in the main event. It's a really different crowd as it was with you and I when we were sitting back watching Raw and pay-per-views in college, where we're looking at these monster of men and just saying, wow, that guy looks great. He looks awesome. It's more of a smart crowd who appreciates a 25, 30-minute technical match over, say, a 7 to 12-minute slugfest between heavyweights.
Now, that's all got to be, or at least a lot of it has to be due to the fact that their development program is just phenomenal, right?
It is. Have you watched NXT at all?
I've seen highlights. I know there's a couple guys that just, they fly. They just don't stop going. I know there's one guy that stands out that you would know right off the top of your head. But, it's pretty crazy.
Well, it is. And when you look at NXT, they are, quote, a developmental brand, per se. But they've brought in so many veterans. I mean, they brought in Shinsuke Nakamura from New Japan, who was phenomenal. I mean, he was incredible in Japan for such a long time. He was a huge signing last year for WWE when he debuted at NXT TakeOver in Dallas, which was 2 nights before WrestleMania in Dallas. And then you have more older established guys like Bobby Roode, who made a name for himself in TNA. And you have guys like Eric Young and Samoa Joe. Some of these names that you kind of
those two names I know.
And you remember those guys because they got that start in TNA when TNA was trying to compete with WWE and never really got to that level. Well, now Triple H is taking the helm of things and saying, you know what, I'm bringing in the most talented guys. I don't give a damn. I don't give a shit where they're from. They're going to be in my brand because they're the best.
Oh, absolutely. So the other guy that you mentioned that's obviously huge now is Kevin Owens.
Oh, my gosh.
Who to me is fascinating because I have watched a little bit of him in the ring, and if you look at him, you're like, oh, that guy isn't a wrestler. He's like the Phil Kessel of wrestlers is how I look at him. Because
he absolutely is. I know you've been dropping some pounds, but I think his body weight was similar to yours a couple of months. I mean, he's a big guy that doesn't look like he can move around. But I've seen you move around a little bit, so I can understand it's kind of hidden. It's kind of a hidden talent for the big guys.
I'm finding it, though. We're getting there.
Hey, me too, man. It's all a struggle. It's all a war.
It is. All right, so we have a few questions from a few people for you. Now, one of them is a topic that you and I were going to discuss anyway. Okay. Because it's a human being that I love and it's a human being that you don't. The question from RJ is, the topic of CM Punk is really interesting. I personally feel like his personality and his physical attributes really bode well for wrestling and not so much for the world of MMA. So I'd love to hear Josh's take on this.
Oh, man. So I tell you this about CM Punk. He is a very smart businessman. And I'll tell you why. Because he leaves WWE, a company that made him millions and millions of dollars, and goes to train and fight in the UFC. and they bill CM Punk as this main event guy in the UFC who's never had a fight. Now, personal feelings aside, I've met him once. I've spoken with people that he's friends with, so I'm going to put my personal feelings aside because I think he's a prick.
Okay.
But he is a very smart businessman who I really think took what he had for WWE for granted, and that translated to him thinking that he was a fighter and a trained professional inside the octagon, and we obviously saw what happened. I think CM Punk will return to the WWE. I think he's not finished in the UFC or in MMA. But, I mean, Kevin, seriously, whenever CM Punk got his ass kicked by Mickey Gall in the octagon, does anybody really want to see him anymore? It's not like he was facing the top of the top.
I do consider myself like one of the most authentic UFC fans. Like, I'm pretty knowledgeable and I listen and read a lot of stuff. I didn't want to see it in the first place. And I love, you know how much I love CM Punk.
Yeah.
Like, that was my, I mean, I'm not alone, but that was my guy. So, but yeah, no, I never wanted to see it. And I don't want to see it again. But I agree with you. I think we're going to see it again.
I think we're going to see it again because, I mean, like I said, I don't know how he kept his name so valuable for 2 years outside of WWE before his first trained bout in UFC. But then I do think, well, he didn't have Dana White and another machine pushing his name. His name was pretty good in the Indies. But whenever he was in WWE, everybody knew CM Punk because he had the machine of Vince McMahon behind him. He had the machine and Dana White behind him, pushing him and marketing him in UFC like a legitimate fighter. He's just not a trained fighter. He's not legitimate. And we saw that. I can't go in the octagon and fight, but I'm not telling people and training for a year that I can and I'll beat somebody's ass. It's just unrealistic for us to think a guy like CM Punk, who's in his mid-30s, who isn't the biggest guy, who isn't the strongest, who isn't the fastest, who isn't the smartest, to go into an octagon against a much younger guy with a much longer reach and a better developed body inside of that octagon and think that Punk can beat him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, no one... I don't think there was anybody that took it seriously enough to think that Punk could win that fight. But
no, I don't. Yeah, you're right.
But yeah, I do think we're going to see it again. Now, would Punk be welcome back? Because I know the chants kept going after he left for a long time.
And they still do.
Do they really?
They still do in quote smart crowds like Chicago or Philadelphia or New York. You know, you'll have those.
I think Chicago crowds chant it like on the tee. Like, I don't think they need to be at a wrestling event.
No, but they still chant CM Punk's name. But that's the crossover appeal he has in UFC to WWE. I mean, they're still going to want to see CM Punk back because of that. You know, say year and a half span where he just took WWE by storm and tried to change things. And it's kind of what Brock Lesnar did when he came back, is he kind of shook the landscape of WWE by saying, hey, this is a real fighter. Now, did you like Brock Lesnar coming back to WWE?
Yeah, I did. I loved what Brock was doing, honestly. When he got sick and he couldn't fight, it made sense to get healthy and then go make money, right? So go back to WWE and get paychecks. You're good at it. It's fine. And I was totally on board with him, you know, stepping in at UFC 200 and trying to get back in that if he thought he was ready for it. But as soon as Brock Lesnar pissed hot for 200, dude, like, I mean, I don't really care what he does now. I mean, I really don't. I get going back and getting paid
3 times, didn't he? Wasn't it 3 separate times?
Yeah, well, it's all pun intended, kind of cloudy, but because they gave him exceptions and gave him a leave of time past what normal fighters get because he wasn't technically on the card. But either way, I mean, yeah, I'm totally okay with him in WWE, whether their wellness policy works or not. He's able to do what he wants to do.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's got to be good. Like, I rewatched it after I had been out of wrestling for a little while before the Lesnar Cena SummerSlam just destruction. Yeah. It was, and if you didn't see it, it was like, what, 20 minutes of Lesnar throwing John Cena on his head. Like, it might have been
like 12 minutes of just annihilation.
Yeah.
It seemed like forever because Cena never got offense in.
Okay. But yeah, it was bad, but it was great because it was like the thing where everyone said, "Oh my God, they did. They actually killed Cena." Like they're okay with beating John Cena up. That's impressive that they're okay with it. So if they're using him in that capacity, I think Lesnar's exactly where he should be.
Yeah, I agree.
And this Goldberg thing how has Goldberg look? Has he gotten really physical yet?
He had a match with Lesnar that lasted 1 minute and 26 seconds.
I saw it. Well, my brother was telling me about that. So for me, who got a brief explanation, explain what happened here.
So what happened was they had a Goldberg-Lesnar match, and Goldberg and Lesnar faced each other at WrestleMania 20. And at WrestleMania 20, this is really when the internet started picking up. So Brock Lesnar was heading to the NFL, and Goldberg was not. And Goldberg was basically phoning it in as well. So the crowd really turned on both guys. And luckily enough, they had the hottest guy in WWE history, Stone Cold Steve Austin, as the referee. So that match was brutal. It was a terrible match, and that's always been something that Brock Lesnar has regretted, was how that match turned out. So they expedited the process. They signed Goldberg to a WWE 2K17 video game contract and then got him in for another match, and now he's obviously spinning that off to other matches. The match was 1 minute and 26 seconds. It was Brock Lesnar shoving Goldberg into the corner, Goldberg pushing him down, hitting 2 spears and a jackhammer. And it was the main event of Survivor Series.
Yeah, I kind of like that stuff, though.
But the thing is, you have Brock Lesnar, who's a real fighter, facing off against a 50-year-old man who hasn't fought in 15 years.
Well, I mean, that was like when Undertaker's going to Tombstone Brock Lesnar, like a year and like a year and 2 months after Brock Lesnar beat the hell out of Frank Mir. It's
hard to suspend that belief, man. It really is.
It's difficult to. And speaking of Undertaker, because he was legitimately my favorite wrestler when I was a little kid, all the way up until CM Punk came around. Yeah. Which made it really tough, because the only WrestleMania I've ever been to that you were obviously at was Punk versus Undertaker, so that was a bummer. Yep. So Undertaker's still going. I don't think I've missed a WrestleMania match unless he's fought after the streak ended.
So after the streak ended, he fought maybe 4 total matches. I mean, he's been good, but he's always consistent, and that's the thing is, he gives enough time for his body to relax and regenerate. He doesn't do weekly shows. He doesn't do pay-per-views back-to-back. So he's had a handful of matches since then. In WrestleMania 31, he beat Bray Wyatt. 32, he beat Shane McMahon in the Hell in a Cell match. So it's they're utilizing the Undertaker's last years, as they should, as making him an attraction. And that's what he's good for. He's in his 50s now. He shouldn't wrestle every pay-per-view. And the fact that they're thinking of giving him a world championship run is laughable to me, because you really don't need him to be a champion. I mean, that doesn't do anything for his career at this point.
Yeah, it seems better suited on other people. But that has been a mistake that they've made for a very long time, is putting the belt on people that don't need it.
Yeah, like John Cena 15 times and Randy Orton 10 times. And it's you think that they would utilize their younger talent by putting something that's supposed to mean something around their waist, but instead, and that goes back to your first question, what's going on with these part-time guys, is these are the guys that are still selling merchandise and making money for them.
Yeah, that's why UFC brings Brock Lesnar in. He still draws top pay-per-views behind one other guy.
That's amazing.
All right, so a couple more wrestling questions, then you and I have to talk a little football before we go.
Definitely.
Okay, so Not for Kingdom wants to know, if you could book WrestleMania today, what would be a couple of things on your list of things you'd want to see?
I'll rattle them off now. World Championship match, or a Universal Championship match, would be Kevin Owens versus Chris Jericho. I would also want to see John Cena versus The Undertaker. That's one match that we really haven't seen since John Cena's been John Cena. They've done such a great job at separating them over the course of their career, while one was on Raw, one was on SmackDown. So I think that's a match that we need to see before they retire. I also think Roman Reigns, he just dropped the United States Championship, but I would love to see a Roman Reigns and Braun Strowman match. But WWE might not want to do that. Just because they've been doing actually, they might want to do that, because if you're trying to do reverse psychology and want WWE to cheer Roman Reigns, they're going to throw Braun Strowman, who people boo mercilessly, and they don't like him, so people might begin to like Roman Reigns again. So, but that's not a world championship match, so I don't want to see that. I'll tell you one match that I really, really, really want to see, and it's very unlikely based on his health conditions. But Daniel Bryan versus The Miz would be an incredible match. They have the history. They've been teasing it for 6 months on SmackDown Live every Tuesday. those two guys and those two personalities would be perfect for WrestleMania this year. Those would be my 3 matches, I think, that I really want to see.
I saw a couple of things about Daniel Bryan. I didn't even know that was on the table for him.
Well, so he's the commissioner, the general manager, commissioner, whatever his job title is on SmackDown. Him and Shane, quote, run SmackDown.
Well, yeah.
He was forced to retire.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. I knew he had been forced to retire because of health concerns, right?
Yeah, for health concerns. But there's always that feeling that it was a very weird way he retired, because he said some things in interviews that he was healthy and good to go, and he actually was not cleared for months and then came back and then had to drop the title and retire. So it's very odd to see how that all panned out, and I obviously do think it's health-related that we haven't seen him back. That's the only reason. But if he can find medical clearance from an independent doctor and sign off insurance and legality rights to WWE saying, my injuries aren't at cost of WWE, then that could be something that WWE looks into and using. But like I said, it's unlikely. But they've been doing an odd amount of teasing of Daniel Bryan retiring over the past few months that could easily be built into a storyline. And The Miz right now is the best heel on SmackDown. So he's a guy that could – they were together in NXT before NXT was something 6 years ago. So they've had this history.
Yeah, it's so weird that they could bring Daniel Bryan. That situation. I went back and watched that video when he retired, and it just seemed like something different. It was bizarre. I remember when Edge went through that, and there's been a bunch of guys that have gone through that, but that one struck me odd that he could come back.
It felt forced too, I think, his retirement speech too. But I think that we will see one more match. I just don't know when and I don't know where. But if it would be, that's where it would take place at, in my mind. Okay,
and before we do football, I'm just curious about this. What's your favorite WrestleMania that you've been to?
Now, define favorite, meaning favorite WrestleMania card or favorite weekend where I don't remember half.
Let's answer both of those.
Well, actually, now that I think of it, I think my favorite one was WrestleMania 30, because even Daniel Bryan there when the championship, he was hot. It was in New Orleans. So I did see that one. Yeah, everything was centralized. They kicked off the night with Austin, Rock, and Hogan. That's Taker's streak was broken. So that match was great, or that pay-per-view was great. But also that atmosphere is perfect for WrestleMania. You have everything so centralized in New Orleans, where, for instance, Orlando, it's going to be fun this year, absolutely. But even times when it was in New York, it was in New Jersey. So you had to drive to Jersey or take a bus to Jersey, or in Miami Stadium, Hard Rock Stadium, what's called now, is about 25 minutes from downtown Miami. That's why I love New Orleans, because everybody was right there. Everybody was enjoying the atmosphere. And it was electric for 4 days. It wasn't, 3 hours or 4 hours. It was 4 days of just excitement and hype. So, yeah, that's probably my favorite one. Second closest would be Dallas last year.
Was that at Jerry World, I assume, at AT&T?
Yeah.
What was that place? What was that place like, dude?
Oh, my gosh. It was everything you'd imagine. And what do you think Jerry Jones would build? They packed in 100,000 people there. The event was it was a spectacle. It wasn't an event. It was just incredible to see how much production and how much money was put into it. And even Dallas in general. I love Dallas, the city of Dallas. And you have so many options there. It's kind of like Pittsburgh. If anybody's been to Pittsburgh that's listening to this, you have like the south side and then Shady side and then downtown. You have all these branched off areas, but every area is packed with people. So that's kind of what Dallas was too. And again, the stadium was about 15, 20 minutes away from downtown Dallas, but it didn't seem that long because it took a little bit quicker to get there, get in and out. And it was just a lot better than, say, Miami, for instance.
Okay, so let's do a little bit of football. You mentioned Pittsburgh, so all right, so Josh was ahead of me in our broadcasting classes, so I'll give him credit for teaching me transitions. You mentioned Pittsburgh. Let's talk Steelers football, Josh. Sure. Josh has always been a fan of two teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers and whatever team Brett Favre is a member of.
Love it. I'm glad you didn't say Green Bay, because I'd have to correct you.
Nope, I knew exactly. I know you better than that. So
that's true.
So now that Brett is presumably still retired, you are a Pittsburgh Steeler fan.
Yeah, absolutely.
How bothered were you? The whole story this week has been Antonio Brown, so we'll get that out of the way. How much did it bother you, all the Facebook Live stuff?
Antonio Brown's a clown. Okay? He is one of the most talented players in NFL history. I mean, not in NFL history, in Steelers history as a receiver. I think he's more physically talented than guys like Stallworth and Swan and Hines Ward and Burris. I mean, you can tell by the electric numbers that he puts up that he is one of the best Steelers receivers of all time. Now, he has a problem for whatever reason that he needs people to love him more than his on-field antics. And I think it shows with the Facebook Live video. With even today, he was Snapchatting getting a haircut, and he was late for a team meeting. That happened today.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. So it bothers me that as a player, Antonio Brown's not smart enough to realize what is right and what is wrong. It's locker room talk. I mean, we've heard that phrase in many different avenues over the past 6 months.
Yeah, we have.
And I've never been in a football locker room or even a sports locker room and have not heard stuff like that. I've heard a lot worse things than that. So, but it just shows you that these athletes, especially Antonio Brown, if it was the fifth receiver, Darius Hayward-Bay, he'd be probably suspended a game. But it also shows you that winning and success in your organization is more important than these personal antics that could ultimately affect how your team is viewed in the media.
Yeah, I agree with that. And speaking of low-string wide receivers, I thought Sammy Coates' performance in the video earned him a benching too.
I completely agree. This irked me almost as much as that clown Odell Beckham Jr. on your Giants.
How dare you, sir? How dare you?
Sir? Come on, where's he at right now? Come on, he's punching holes in walls. Give me a break.
He's on a boat in Miami now. He's fine.
Goddamn right he is, and I wish I was on there with him.
Yeah, you're pretty close. Go find him.
I'll have to find him. I'm sure I'll be able to get on this jabroni that lives in Fort Lauderdale.
All right, so handicap Steelers at Patriots, which is now this is really weird because everybody's been talking for the last week. It's been Manning, Brady, or Roethlisberger with one Flacco since 2003 out of the AFC. But the crazy part is since Ben's rookie year, the Patriots and Steelers haven't met in the AFC title game.
Yeah, it's interesting to see, and I'm not excited as a Steelers fan to see it. I just don't think they match up well. Their offense is really good, but it always seems like New England has Pittsburgh's number. Even dating back to the last time that they faced in the playoffs, I mean, the Patriots rolled right through them. And even during the regular season, you'll see the Steelers this year with faster linebackers. Obviously, Shazier, James Harrison's an ageless wonder at 38. He can still keep up with a lot of tight ends in the league. And even though Martellus Bennett is a freak, I still think James Harrison can be physical at the line of scrimmage with Bennett and not give him those easy 8 to 10 yard outs. The biggest guy that they're going to have to worry about is Julian Edelman. And I'm not sure if rookie Artie Burns is fast enough from side to side to really slow down Edelman. And we know how Brady likes to pick apart any defense, especially the Steelers in the middle of the field. So, and that's going back to Wes Welker days. That's going back how even Troy Brown days, which Tom Brady has just owned the Steelers. When I see it, if I had to predict a winner, my heart says Steelers by a field goal, but my mind says New England by a touchdown.
Do you think the Steelers' offense is good enough to play the possession game? Because I think if they can pull that off, that the Patriots are beatable. Because the Patriots have the number one scoring ranked defense, but if you look at the offenses they played, Russell Wilson in Seattle is by far the best offense, and that was a flawed offense.
Yeah, and they didn't have Thomas Rawls has been good all year, but they, you can tell that they lost a lot on offense when they lost Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah.
This was a guy that balanced that offense for them. I think New England's beatable. I really do. The Steelers' offense is built around speed, right? You have Le'Veon Bell, you have Antonio Brown, Sammy Coates, you have Robert Ayers, who's a guy that's actually stepped up big time in the playoffs for them as a slot guy. I think they can outscore New England, but I think New England's defense can force more Roethlisberger interceptions than the Steelers can force New England turnovers. Because if they get the slightest amount of pressure from the outside with guys like Hightower, I think that Ben's going to scramble and is going to make one or two mistakes, try to force the ball into small pockets as he's known to do. And I love Ben. I'm a huge Ben fan. I love how he plays, but he plays like we said earlier, my favorite player of all time, Brett Favre. He takes chances that instead of taking those chances, he probably should just take a 4-yard sack, or he probably should just throw the ball away. So that's why I think that New England will end up winning, is because they're more prone to forcing Roethlisberger to make mistakes than they are to make mistakes themselves.
I agree. I agree 100% with that. And I do want to mention you went through all of the talented players in the Steelers offense and missed, the only guy that scores any points, which is the kicker.
Chris Boswell, he had the pause.
Which, by the way, I saw it.
And that's what scares me. That's what scares me is you can't put up touchdowns against Kansas City. You can't get field goals against New England at all.
Yeah. Oh, God, no. You have to go in there. How many points do the Steelers need to win this game? Like, what number do you have to reach to win?
I would say 31.
Wow.
I could see them. Like I said, if I'm betting with my heart, I can see a 31-28 game.
Yeah.
Where New England rattles off a couple of quick touchdowns, but the defense settles down a little bit and bends but doesn't break. That's kind of what the Steelers defense has been known for all year. But I mean, they are young, but they are getting better. I worry that it's too soon to think that young defense with all of that talent over there is ready to stop Tom Brady.
Yeah, and before we jump to the NFC side, I got to know, have you gone to any games and have you worn a Favre jersey to any games lately?
I went to the Dolphins-Steelers game where Jay Ajayi introduced himself to the world with over 200 yards rushing. But I was actually wearing a Lawrence Timmons jersey.
I'm proud of you.
I know. I have my Brett Favre jersey packed. And you ask what pack jersey I have? Well, I'll take your pick. Green or white Packers. I have the Jets one. I have the Vikings one. And I have the Brett Favre Atlanta Falcons draft jersey. So I have a plethora of Favre jerseys. I just don't want to be that guy who's wearing a jersey from the 90s. You
were that guy a lot, so it's okay.
Easy, big fella.
All right, well, speaking of your 90s Packers jerseys, let's go to the Packers. I'll go first because I'm seem to be a contrarian here. I love Rodgers, and I love this Packers team. I think Atlanta does everything the Packers do, except I think they do it planned out, and they're better at it. And I think Atlanta's going to the Super Bowl this year. I
couldn't agree more. I actually will 100% agree with you, and maybe it's because I'm so sick of hearing how great Aaron Rodgers has been, but let me just some facts. You look at the final 4 games of the season, people started really loving Rodgers because he rattled off 2 games with 4 touchdowns and no picks, and understandably so. But in the last 4 games, Rodgers had 11 touchdowns, 0 picks. Do you know who's also had that? Matt Ryan. Rodgers had over 1,145 yards. Matt Ryan, 1,130 yards. So, and you look at the completion percentage, I think everybody's talking about with Aaron Rodgers. Matt Ryan had a better completion percentage over the final 4 games of the season than Aaron Rodgers at 73% to 70%. So when people are talking about the streak that Aaron Rodgers is on, you have to look at it as basically 3 parts. I look at it at 3 or 4 parts of the season. The first 5 games, the second 5 games, and the final 5 games. And then I look at what they do in the playoffs. Matt Ryan has been consistent the entire way. I think Matt Ryan is at the top of his game, has been the best quarterback in the NFL this year, and he has whenever I look at 2 teams, I say this. Obviously, quarterback, I think it's a draw between the 2. Running back, advantage Falcons. Receivers, advantage Falcons, especially with Jordy Nelson out. Yep. And then you look at the defense are pretty similar, but Atlanta with Vic Beasley, that's a game changer. Vic Beasley is very similar to Clay Matthews in Green Bay's Super Bowl run where he makes big plays. I got Atlanta winning this game, and you're absolutely right, Kev. I think that they're more planned out. They have more of a strategy, and Dan Quinn has put an emphasis on hard-hitting but explosive offense in that Atlanta Falcons team.
Well, I want to go back a second because I think Rodgers has been a better quarterback than Matt Ryan for the last 6 weeks. He has been. I know the numbers are different, but you have to remember that you're right. The running backs and the receivers are both better in Atlanta. And Ryan's in a phenomenal system. But, I mean, Rodgers, the throws that he's making, Matt Ryan can't make those throws. We haven't seen him. We haven't seen one. We haven't seen
to make those throws, though.
Well, he should have. Well, he's had chances in the last 8 years to make those throws. They haven't been this team the whole time. And Ryan's been great this year. And, highest yards per attempt in NFL history. And they scored 34.5 points per game. Dude, Ryan's been great. And he's the MVP of the league. I'm 100% with you. But, I mean, I think you just didn't give enough credit to what Rodgers has done with. You got to remember, Randall Cobb has been a corpse, right, for like a year and a half now, and Devontae Adams was a guy who was just a serial drop machine last year. And then he loses Jordy Nelson. So I'm with you. I think Ryan's the MVP, and I do think the Falcons win this game, but I think the Packers have the advantage at quarterback.
I think they have a slight advantage at quarterback, but not enough where the rest of their weaknesses could trump Atlanta. And I think that's what I'm trying to say.
That's fair.
To be honest with you, if you give me an option right now of Matt Ryan or Aaron Rodgers, it's a flip of a coin to me. It might be 52% Aaron Rodgers to 48% Matt Ryan. But you're in Atlanta. You're looking at the circumstances and the talent around him. I mean, a quarterback can be only as good as his offensive line and his talent around him. And Green Bay has a solid offensive line, and so does Atlanta. But more weapons for Matt Ryan? Yeah, absolutely. I'd take his weapons and his ability over the past 4 weeks to I know they have great players. But it all starts with Matt Ryan. If he doesn't get that offense rolling early and often, Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman can't be themselves in the backfield. He's not going to be able to expose the defense and do checkdowns to his tight ends. So it really relies around which quarterback starts hotter. And I think both guys, as we've talked about, have been so good this whole year. And Rodgers just a little bit hotter, I guess, for the past 6 weeks.
I think we're in lockstep because I do think Atlanta is just I just think they're a better team. I think their offense is built and they're healthy and they have everybody and it's a machine right now.
It is, and it's been impressive what they did. It's been impressive what they did in the playoffs last week. I mean, that's when it really surprised me, and I said to myself, this team is legit.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people thought that, it's the Seattle Seahawks. They have all of this experience. They've been to the Super Bowl multiple times. They've won a ring. They gave them the advantage, but Atlanta quickly shot that down. And why? Because they started hot, and they didn't stop. And that's something that the Falcons need to rely on moving forward, especially against the Packers offense, like we've seen, where Rodgers can explode at any second.
Yeah, we're going to let Josh go in a second. I was looking at the schedule last week, and right before that Seahawks-Atlanta game, and I was just looking at that thinking, if Atlanta wins this, they're one game away from the Super Bowl, and it's a home game, and no one's talking about them at all.
Yeah.
At all. Is. No, it's crazy. And still, even this week, no one's talking about them.
And that's what bothers me is like, come on, give some. They were 11-5. They've lost some. They lost a couple of good games. I mean, they didn't lose against schlubs all year, like a couple of like the Steelers losing a couple of random games, or even New England losing to Buffalo earlier in the year. Like they've lost to some pretty solid teams. They lost to some talented teams, and the fact that they're not getting any publicity is just it's mind-boggling to me, especially because they're so hot offensively, and the media loves offensive teams.
So we're going to go with your heart pick. So Super Bowl is Atlanta Steelers, and you have Pittsburgh?
I think it's Atlanta. Yeah, I think it's Atlanta-Pittsburgh.
We'll go with the heart pick, right? There's nothing on the line here.
Man, my heart always leads me in wrong directions. Come on now.
You've done okay for yourself. You're doing all right.
I think I'm doing it. I'm gonna go Atlanta, Pittsburgh, and that's going to be a fun game if that actually happens, because I think both teams have an average to slightly above average defense, but their offense can explode at the drop of. I mean, they're both of their offense can easily explode for 30 points.
All right, I'm gonna watch a little wrestling between now and WrestleMania, and we'll have you on before WrestleMania.
I am absolutely ready for it, my man.
I love it. All right, at Josh Isenberg 4 on Twitter, at CS Reality on Twitter, Chairshot Reality at WrestleZone.com. What else you got to plug?
That's it, man. I have my articles every Monday, every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Reactions to Raw, SmackDown, and NXT, and you'll be seeing more baseball tweeting as I'll be working for the Marlins beginning in April. So that'll be fun as always.
All right, at Josh Isenberg 4 on Twitter. Josh, thanks, dude.
Thanks, Kevin.
The Calhoun Show.
What a good dude. Thank you again to Josh for coming on the show. That was a lot of fun, and it was cool to go over some old wrestling memories and talk about where wrestling's going. I really do mean that. And I talked to Josh for a minute on the phone after we stopped, and I'm going to try a little bit of wrestling here in the next couple weeks. I set the DVR. for Monday Night Raw, so we're gonna see what happens. I'll buzz through it in like 40 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. And go check out what they do with Josh and Justin, and I know they've got other guys in there now too. But I've known both of those two since 2008 when I got to Point Park in Pittsburgh. I knew I wanted to get into broadcasting, so I went to a big meeting where there's 8 different organizations there. Like, hey, we do this, and obviously. I was looking for the people that were doing games, and that was Justin and Josh. So I met them, and we went to one of the women's basketball preseason games, and I basically tried out against another kid, and beat him. So Josh was my he did play-by-play, and I did color commentary for Point Park women's basketball in 2008 and 2009. It was a blast. So I've known those guys for a long time. They know their wrestling, as you can tell from listening to that. And I think Justin's even more insane with it than Josh is, and Josh loves it. So definitely go check out what those guys are doing. It's really cool. They actually shoot their show in the new TV studio at Point Park. In downtown Pittsburgh. It's awesome. I walked by it outside it when I was in Pittsburgh a few months ago. When I was back out there finally after the Myrtle Beach trip, that's an all-time episode, by the way. Me and Patty in Myrtle Beach. That's a good one. If you're new, go check that out. That'll give you a good idea of what this show's all about. So thank you to Josh for the 800th time. I don't know why I keep doing that, but whatever. Appreciate him coming on. So moving forward, we have NFL championship games this weekend. We have a team imploding in in New York with the New York Knicks. Carmelo Anthony and Phil Jackson hate each other. By the way, we got a late question in here. I want to give a shout out to Andy Brennan at absilver0505 on Twitter, sending a question for hashtag Ask Isenberg for the show, but it came in after Josh called in. He asked who your final 4 are, Josh, in the Rumble. So Josh, if you go back and listen to this, go check out AB Silver's tweet. Give him a shout out. So thank you for sending that in, and to everybody else that sends stuff in, both on Facebook and Twitter. I know I got a couple of the questions in from RJ, and I think we got Billy in there too. Old Billy K. Oh, love Billy K. Billy Stats checking in this week. So hello to you, bud. I miss you. We'll have to get back out there and see a Point Park game at some point here. And also, we're taking top 5 wrestling memories on the Facebook page. So basically, if you've been a wrestling fan, we're looking at that stuff, and then I can't remember if I mentioned this before or not. I know my sister Stephanie told me to ask Josh this question, and I completely forgot about it because I don't pay attention to what I'm supposed to be doing. But this was a great idea from one of our show's best friend. I think I'm going to officially dub Sarah the show's best friend. So our best friend Sarah checked in and gave us an idea for a topic, which was a sports bucket list. So something that, obviously a big one this year would have been the Cubs winning the World Series. And it could be something that you just want to see in person, or something you want to see on TV, or just something that you hope happens. So sports bucket list, throw some ideas out there. That's a really cool one. We'll start gathering those up. Maybe we'll look at it next week, here on the podcast. So, that's it. We will be back. I'm going to have a guest in here next week. I haven't decided, or figured out who yet. But we're gonna bring somebody in next week, because it's the week between the NFC, AFC title games and the Pro Bowl, not the Super Bowl. So we're bringing somebody in. We're gonna have a little fun next week. I'll figure it out. But this was a lot of fun. This was a good episode. So go check out CS Reality, Chair Shot Reality. Those guys are killer. And like I said, I got to film Josh getting hit with a kendo stick. I'm gonna post that. I'm gonna find that picture and post it on my Twitter at ShutUpCalhoun, and we'll post it over at Calhoun Show as well. So you guys have a wonderful week. If your football team's playing this weekend, F you and good luck. All right, guys, we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to The Calhoun Show. Join the conversation by following the show on Twitter @Calhoun Show and emailing the show at calhounshow@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, and don't forget to subscribe and download for free on iTunes. Want to hear yourself on the show? Leave us a voicemail by calling 860-740-2119.